everybody, welcome to Fab Fit Friday. I'm excited because today I'm happy to report that I've had time to work on my muslin for my basic bodice draft. I've been very busy, so I didn't have a lot of time last week, and then when I fell down hiking, that complicated my issue. But good news, my hand is back to normal. I spent all last weekend babying it, and now I can say that I can type with two hands, and I can sew, and I can do all the good things I need to do. So I'm excited about that. And I spent some quality time with my basic bodice draft, so I could figure out and fine tune the fit of it. And I'm happy with the fit of it now. I'm wearing my latest version, and I was able to put my center front seam running down the front, so it's face out, so it just makes it easier for me to show you guys how things are fitting. And I'm going to talk about my fine tuning that I did to get it to fit, and I'm really excited. I used my 2-mirror setup that I initially got going so I could work on my pants fitting, and I can't stress enough how important it is to have a second mirror so you can see your back view. If you're trying to twist and turn and move and take pictures of the back of you, that gets pretty difficult to see how your muslin is actually fitting. So it's really important, I think, to have a way where you can see your back view without playing twister with yourself. So that was one tip that I really, I've been using my 2-mirror system, and I have to say it makes a huge difference in how you can see, especially even from the side and from the back. It just makes such an easier time of things. I'm going to start by showing you my basic bodice draft, and I'm going to show you the things I did to it to get it to fit like this. And I think part of my agita last week, I'm going to lower the view so you can see my whole entire front view here. I think last week part of my agita was when you have a large bust and you're drafting for yourself, you end up with huge darts. And initially I had, a huge waist dart, and then I rotated half of it to a bust dart. And a large bust can be fitted with bust darts and waist darts. However, I think you can see here, I rotated my bust dart up to my shoulder. So you can see I've got a dart at the shoulder that goes to just before my apex, and then my waist dart picks up below it. And this isn't a complete princess seam because it's 2 darts, but you can see how much nicer the fabric lays and conforms to a really busty shape. So I just wanted to share that with you. I also fine-tuned the fit of my sleeve, which I am now really happy with. And, I'm excited. So, once you have the fit of your muslin and it's, what do I want to say? You've worked out your fitting. Notice how nice this muslin is sitting on my shoulder. My armhole is right where it needs to be. It's comfortable. I don't feel like it's pulling and being weird. And now I know I have the shape that I need to design other things. So the purpose of drafting a basic sloper is to then use it for other styles. So it's really important that you get the fit of your basic bodice perfected before you move on to trying to create other designs with it, because if you haven't fit it properly, what happens is you then transfer those fitting issues to your new designs. So I'm super happy with the state of my muslin, and I'm going to now start to share with you the adjustments I made from the muslin I had on last week to show you how I ended up fixing my sleeve a little bit, and also fixing the fit of my front and back. So I'm going to switch my view here, and I am going to show you my pattern pieces. Now I actually used green sticky notes to fill in when I added, so you can see. So the first thing I did was I closed my bust start here and I opened it at the shoulder. So last week when I was working on my muslin, I had a bust start and a waist start, and it looked like this. Let me just remind you. Okay, so this was my pattern that I was working with last week. So basically I cut out the dart here, drew a line to line up with the top of my waist dart, drew a line to the center of my shoulder, and then spread my shoulder. So you can see what my pattern looks like now is I've got this giant, oh, hi Diane, thank you for coming. It's just you and me. I've been sitting here talking to myself for a good 7 minutes now, so thank you for joining me. I'm just starting to share what I did to finally fit my bodice to myself, and I was explaining how I was using green sticky note, like this is my little sticky notes, so I used the green sticky notes so you can kind of see what I did. Now, last week we were debating if I had raised my darts too high. I, in fact, did not raise them too high. When I got off camera and I started looking in my two mirror system, I realized that it was in the right position. I just think having a huge waist dart and a huge bust dart does not make a smooth, I mean, it fit, but it was kind of awkward. Hi, Renee, welcome. Oh, not Renee, Arena, sorry. And Patty, welcome. So this is what I have on my body right now. A shoulder dart, which I rotated from the bust, and then once I rotated it, it was huge. So I cut my waist dart and I closed this just a little bit to sort of balance out the two darts. So that's what I did to my front. Another thing I did was when I was wearing my first muslin that I had on last week, I felt like it was pulling weird. So what I did was I actually cut off a 1/2 inch of my side seam in the front and I added it to my back. Okay, so I transferred a 1/2 inch here and I put it here. Now you'll notice all of these jaggy shapes, like I have this little triangular shape here, I have a triangular shape here, and I have a triangular shape here. What I also realized, hi Mary, hi Lean, welcome. Oh good, Lean says, oh no, you're not on your own. Sometimes when I start my lives and I look over, because I can see the way my computer's set up here, I'll show you. So see, I can see, let me just show you. So see, I can see you guys and your comments over on the left, and then I have my OBS screen that shows me what you can see, you know, and then if I move this over here, usually I can see what's happening here. I don't know why I can't see this window. Something's happening there, but I'm not going to worry about it if you can see me and hear me. But basically, this is what I look at when I'm streaming. And so initially there was nobody here and I was talking to myself, which I can talk to myself, but thank you guys for joining me. Oh, sorry, I don't want to make you guys dizzy here. All right, so since I'm standing up, you can take another quick look at my fixed muslin. I'm happy with it now. It's comfortable. The sleeves are comfortable. You know, and of course it's weird because it's ending at my waist. you know, I would never wear a garment that stopped here. So we're going to talk about that in a minute too. All right, so let me just pop back in my chair and let's move back over here now. Okay, so I noticed on my muslin last week, it was still hanging off my shoulders a tiny bit, like a generous 1/4 inch. So instead of pleating it out, you know, doing that L-shape adjustment where I cut here to here and then slide it in, what I did was I put my armholes together like this, and I actually just measured in a 1/4 and then I redrew the curve. So I took it off of the edge just to get it onto my shoulder, but then I realized in the front that would be okay because I had extra here, but in the back, because I trimmed off a generous 1/4 and it stayed that way, I was trimming off a 1/4 almost until I got down to here. I thought this would be too tight again. So what I did was, and this is another way that I've added ease, and if anybody has my my perfectly fitted shirt workbook, this is how I show how to add ease to the upper back without changing the shoulder. Let me just stop here and say hi to Andrea. My notifications for you still have not come on. Good morning. Oh, I saw it. I saw the notification in the corner of my computer. It said, "Oh, J Stern Designs is live," but it was very late. Like I had already been talking for like 5 minutes before it popped up. So I don't know what's happening. Mary says the princess seam fits your bust area better than darts. Yes, that's what I was trying. I was talking about that at the very beginning when I thought I was talking with myself. When you have a D+ cup size and you're asking a piece of fabric to conform over that shape, especially if it does not stretch, a princess seam is more flattering. And I think that was part of my agita last week. I had 2 gigantic darts, a bust dart and a waist dart, and it just couldn't make the shape as lovely as I wanted to. So getting back to this now, after I brought my shoulder up that generous 1/4, really almost, it was probably like 5/16, so almost 3/8 of an inch I trimmed off. I wanted to open it back up here. So let me show you what I did and how all these little wedgy things happened. The first thing is, like I said, when I was wearing my muslin, I felt like I wanted to bring my side seam forward a little bit. I felt like it was too far backward along the side of my body. So I literally just cut off a 1/2 inch here and added it here. So this green was a standard 1/2 inch. So I added it. So that was there. Then, let me just do what I did on here. Oh, that's the back. All right. So then what I did was, I'll just show you on here. I drew a guideline from here and straight up to my shoulder like this. Okay, and then what I did was I pivoted here, I cut straight through, and I cut straight through here, and I pivoted this out, this amount right here. Okay, because I wanted to add back in what I had kind of scooped out of my armhole. So because I added almost an inch here, I trimmed back the amount I added here. And then this, to make this, you can see that, wait, I think I have to show you guys, hold on. Let me just find an old pattern to work with. Right here, let me work with this. I don't need this copy anymore. because it's all done. So let me just show you here. So the first thing I did was I took this up like this because it was a little bit too much. So I took it up like this and I cut it out. So you can see I'm removing about 1/4 inch from my edge. And just to make it nice and neat, I'm going to cut it out on my new line. So you can see. Okay, so that first step, cutting this much off, brought my shoulder up, you know, my seam onto the tip of my shoulder. Oh, you lost sound? It doesn't look like I've lost sound. I really hope you guys can still hear me. I have my microphone right in front of my face. So that was the first step I did. Then, because I had taken it in, essentially the width, I took it in here a little bit. So what I did was I drew myself a guideline from here and then straight up like this. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here is I'm blocking out my armhole, and I'm going to just cut this off. Okay, so I cut to the shoulder but not through it, and then I cut through this like this, and I tipped it out like this. So you can see what that's doing is it's adding some ease back in across my upper back. All right, so that's how I made more ease in my back and compensated for the fact that I trimmed that off. So I'm just gonna take that down. Okay, just gonna tape it so you can see here. Okay. All right, so I did that, and then that, you can see what that did was it made a little angle here. See how my side seam, it doesn't match up now because I've got that little wedge there. So I wanted to close that because I wanted my side seams to be the same length. So what I did was I cut, or let me just draw myself a little guideline here. Like this. And what this allows me to do, let me just cut this off here on the bottom of the pattern. If I make a cut through here and make a pivot here, that allows me to close that. So I end up with this little weird wedgie here now. So let me just show you that. Okay, so I was able to close the fact that my side seam, oops, was spread open that little bit, so that fixed that. So basically, let me just put a sticky note here so you can see. So I've got this little wedgie now here. Okay, so if I bring this back, you can see, it's not that one. Okay, so see, it opened up like this when I shut this. So I pivoted and swung this back up so the side seam was the same length that it should be. And then I put a little wedge of fabric or paper in there to even up the fact that it's not matching right here. So like if I just take a piece of that off of here and stick it over here. Okay, so that's how I got that to match. Okay, and then remember, I said that let me just grab a little bit more here. I don't know how far down I'll need it, so let me just put a little extra here. So initially, before I fixed this and before I opened this up to close this, I had added a 1/2 inch here because I took a 1/2 inch off of my front to move the side seam over. So I had this weird jog now. So basically let me just use this ruler. So I just even this up like this, just so I could see what I was doing. Let me just use my rotary cutter here. Oops. Okay. So it looks something like that. All right, and then basically I don't need this. I didn't need any extra down here, so I trimmed that back off. So basically I trimmed off the wedge that I made here over here, because the only reason why I opened this up was to make the side seam, you know, make this meet. So that's how I fit the back of my pattern. You know, so I cut this off so it looks something like this. You know, something like that. All right, so that's how I ended up with this. So you can see that's a way that you can add ease from the armhole up. So if your upper back is tight, you can swing this whole piece out and then cut here and swing this to match and then fill this in and then trim it off the side. So that's basically how I fit the back of my bodice. And again, remember I brought my seam up to the actual tip of my shoulder, so I'm really happy with where this fits now. It's very comfortable, and I'm super excited. So I will put a link to my perfectly fitted workbook, perfectly fitted shirt workbook in the video below after I get off, if anybody's interested in that, because I do have a lot of fitting things in there that I use when I'm not dealing with a cup size. So my perfectly fitted shirt is a cup size pattern, and because we drafted this to our measurements, the need to change the cup size should be very minimal. I mean, you do remember I did do a tiny full bust adjustment early on to give myself a little bit of room. But really, I might have been able to do this adjustment in the front, and that might have worked as well. So, so that's where I am with my muslin. Let me just stop and say hello to Insane Salty. Hello. And Diane, welcome. You're a little late and you need this. Yay. Well, you can go back and watch the beginning. I was basically talking about, you know, my week and finally having time to work on this. I kind of felt a little, I don't want to say bad, but like last week, I wasn't 100% prepared. Plus, when I fell down, I completely screwed myself. So I really made sure I took time to finish this today, because like I said, it's really important that this fits on your body before you move on. And I want to show you how to create a princess seam today. And then I want to show you how to draft a basic skirt sloper. And we're going to focus on the hip block, meaning from the waist to the full hip measurement. And we can extend it down to a skirt length, but basically the top of a skirt draft is the bottom of a torso to add on to here. Because remember, my muslin stops right at my waist. I would never wear a shirt that stops right at my waist, so I want to extend it into a fitted slope torso length bodice. So that's what we'll be doing next week. But before we get to that, I want to show you how to draft a princess seam. So let me just move my pattern out of the way. And let's look at this part one more time. So technically, this is not a princess seam. Okay, all I did here was rotate my bust dart to my shoulder. So that's the first thing I'm going to show you how to do. And then we're actually going to separate it into a side front and a center front piece to create a princess seam style line. But just know that if you wanted to, you could create a princess seam in a one-piece pattern by just connecting your waist and shoulder dart here. And if I took this off and showed you, at the tip of my dart at the shoulder, I sewed about a 1/16 of an inch fold of fabric to get to the tip of my waist dart. So technically it looks like a princess seam because the seam goes from shoulder all the way down to the waist, because I connected them with a little, like a mini little pin tuck between the tip of this dart and the tip of that dart. So that's why it looks like it's a princess seam, but I'm going to show you how to actually do a princess seam now. So here is my pattern, and for this I cut off all of my seam allowances, so it's just the pattern with no seam allowances, and then that way I can add them back in after. You don't have to take your seam allowances off, you can leave them on, but I decided to take them off. So again, you want to make sure these darts are in the right position for your body before you switch or draft it into something else. So I really took some time and looked at my bodice, and I think all of the struggle with those darts were simply because they were huge and I was having a hard time creating a nice shape here, but they were not too high, so I did not adjust these off of what I had last week. I just drew them back in. And what I want to show you now is we are going to draw a line from the middle of our shoulder, I'll use pink for this, to the tip of the waist dart. So I'm going to get myself to here. Now this is why this is important. First of all, that this waist dart is in the right spot for your body. You want the waist dart to be a little bit from below your apex, and then just slightly off to the side of your apex. You don't want a princess seam to run right over your actual apex. You want it to be just to the side of your apex in your fullest part when you're doing a princess seam from shoulder to hem. So it's important that this dart, when you look at your waist dart, make sure it's a little bit lower and also a little bit, you know, over to the side of your actual apex. Doesn't need to be a lot, you know, 1/2 inch is fine. You just want it to be just over to the side. So this is in the right spot, and my bust dart is also a little bit lower than my apex, and it's about this far. Well, my apex is probably about here, so it's probably, you know, 1.5 inches to 1 3/4 away from my apex. So make sure you get those darts in the right spot before you create a princess seam. So after I draw that vertical line, I'm going to connect to my tip of my bust dart like this. So I've got here and I've got up here. So what I'm going to do, first step is I'm going to shift this dart up to my shoulder. Now, interesting fun fact, when you rotate a dart, the farther away the end of the dart is from the tip of the dart, the wider it's going to open. Okay, and you can see that that's what happens, because the closer you are to the tip of your dart, the more narrow it gets. So obviously the farther we go. So when I rotate this dart that's this big onto my shoulder, it's going to be much bigger when I get it up here to there. So let me show you. You don't need to cut out your entire dart. I'm just going to cut one dart leg. I'm going to cut straight through on my little horizontal, and then I'm going to cut from there. I'm going to make a little pivot here, so I'm not cutting through. There's a little pivot right there, and then I'm just going to cut straight through to my shoulder, and I'm going to cut through the shoulder. Okay, so what this allows me to do now is it allows me to pivot this down, And what I'm lining up is my other dart leg with the cut edge. So I'm rotating that down until this is going to break there. Okay, and it actually has to, don't make a pivot there. I had it there initially, but it needs to break off like that. You're going to end up with a little triangle wedge there. So now I'm going to shut this dart. I'm just going to tape it shut. And you can see I've made this gigantic shoulder dart. Now, if you feel that your shoulder dart is significantly bigger than your waist dart, if you wanted to cut your cut one leg of your waist dart and up to here, you could pivot this shut a little bit, and I did that over here. You can see. So see, what I did was I cut this dart leg, and then I opened up here, and I shut that a little bit so it wasn't so huge. So you can play with the balance of the two darts. So let's just say, I guess I can just do it. So let me just first put, just gonna put some paper under here. I only need a little piece actually. Okay, so I'm just gonna cut this dart leg. I'm gonna go up the line to here. Oh, wait a minute, let me, and see, this is gonna be my dart right here. So what I can do here is I can open this up a little bit and close that a little bit. So see how, what happens when I rotate, I can add it here and make this a little bit smaller. You know, just to make them a little bit more balanced. So let me just tape that. Okay, so now you can see that really we have the, if I cut off this dart, completely, you can see we basically have the princess seam shape. So rotating the dart from the bust to the shoulder is really like the biggest step. And the fact that this opens, I'm going to color it in so you can see. Okay, this little part that opens up when you shut this dart, that becomes the ease that you have to ease in the side front into the center front. So you know when you do a princess seam, you have notches a few inches above and below the apex, and what you end up doing is you end up easing this in to this. So where does that ease come from? It comes from the fact that when you create or close the bust dart, you get that little opening there. Okay, so now I'm just going to cut this apart. Okay, so you can see I've got my two shapes here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to measure, or I'm going to line up my bottom from my waist edge. I'm going to measure up, let's see, probably, I'm going to measure up 4 inches, and I'm going to make a notch here. Okay, and then I'm going to go on my shoulder and do the same thing, and I'm going to create a notch that's probably 4 inches, between 3 and 4 inches away from this. So somewhere right here. So you can see when we sew together our princess seam style line, it's going to be 1 to 1 down to here, and it's going to be 1 to 1 to here. But you can see from here to here, this is going to be a little bit longer than this. And the reason why that is because we didn't add anything here, but we added that, you know, about a 1/2 inch, maybe almost 5/8 of an inch right there. So that's where the extra comes from when you're dealing with sewing a princess seam. So the next step is, and this is partially, one of the reasons why I cut off all my seam allowances. I have to add all my seam allowances back in. So I'm going to do that. But I'm also going to ease the shape down a little bit. You can see this is very pointy here, and I'm not pointy. Okay, I don't have like a torpedo bust shape. So I'm actually going to just skim off a little bit here, just to make it a little less pointy. So basically I'm just going to cut this. So I'm trimming off that point basically, to make it more of an, just a smoother curve there. Then we're going to add our seam allowances back in. But before we do that, let me just show you here. If I measure this edge from notch to notch, this measures 7 3/4. So this is 7 3/4. This measures 7 1/4. 7 1/4. So this is 7 1/4. So you can see we're going to have to ease this in to this to get it to sew together. And that's basically what the difference is between making a shoulder dart and a waist dart here. You can see the little ease is there. It's still there, but it's just hanging out there. So I think that this is going to fit me even a little bit better once I take this ease and ease it in, about 4 inches above and below the actual tip of my bust dart. So it's still here. It's just we didn't ease it. We just left it there. All right. So basically now, the only things left I have to do to this is, we want to make sure we keep these. So now that I've drawn all over it, we want to make sure we have our notches to sew back together, these purple. And then we're going to add seam allowance. Okay, so I'm basically just going to tape paper here. Maybe I'll use my sticky notes just so it looks a little bit different. I'm going to cut myself some strips here. And that way you'll be able to clearly see what I'm adding. Okay, so basically I'm just going to add this paper. Another thing you can do if you don't want to tape paper on like this, I'll show you on the other side. You can actually trace your shape and then add your seam allowances back around. So depending on how you feel like doing it, you can either, like I said, either make some strips because we do have to add a seam allowance, or you can trace it and then add your seam allowance back. But you can see it's not, I'm using these little sticky notes so you can see what I'm doing, but alright, let me just get one more sticky note here. Oh, actually I've got a piece right here. Let's stick this right here. Okay, this is perfect. Okay. Okay, So now, because I'm working with a curve, I'm going to use the short end of my ruler, and I'm just going to add my seam allowance. And when I add my seam allowance, I'm going to use a pen, and the reason why I'm using a pen and not a Sharpie marker or a pencil is because Sharpie markers have almost 1/8 of an inch of width to them. So when you're adding a seam allowance, it's better to use a pencil or a pen. And see, I'm just using the short end of my ruler. To add that. You know, and then as I get to the straightaway here, I can actually use the long part of my ruler. Okay, so this is going to be my completed side front. With the seam allowance. You know, then I'm going to have to add seam allowances to my armhole and my shoulder and everything else. But basically, I wanted to show you how you create the seam there. My notches are here and here. Now, the way I like to gather up the side front to fit the center front is to do a row of gathering stitches pretty close to the edge, like this, and then do a second row about 3/4 of an inch away. So when you pull those two rows of stitching together, you can sew down the center at 1/2 inch. So your stitching line is going to be, you know, right here. And what that does is it holds those gathers on either side of your stitch. So it makes it very easy for you to get a smooth fit on that curve, because you don't want any gathers or puckers in your princess seam. So you want to have this gathered very nicely, and you want it controlled on either side of the gather, so as you stitch through it, you can just ease it in and not create mini pleats. Oh, Andrea says, I have a rotary cutter that has a spacer that can move. This allows me to put the spacer next to the pattern edge, and the blade will cut whatever width seam allowance I want. That is a cool thing, Andrea. I'm gonna have to check out that. I've heard of that, where, you know, you can have that so you run it along and then it cuts out here. That's a cool thing. I like that. Thank you for sharing that tip. So there's our side front. And then again, I was saying, if you didn't want to, see, do I have any paper? What is this? All right, so let me just get a piece of paper here. So if you didn't want to do all this fussy taping to get your seam allowance back, you could also take your pattern piece. I'm just going to cut myself a little strip of this. Just going to cut a little piece here. Let me just get this out of the way. It's an alpha. Oh, alpha I think is the best. All right, so see if, oh, and of course I didn't cut it long enough. Of course not. All right, hold on one second here. I'm going to turn it upside down so the grid is there. And then I'm also going to, honestly, I'm just going to use this little piece right here. Okay, so if you don't want to be taping to all your edges, if you just tape your pattern piece to another piece of paper like this, then you can add your seam allowances along the edge without all of that tape. So basically now I can, oops, add my 1/2 inch. You know, and this side, it's almost straight here, so I can use the longer side of my ruler. think I need some new pens. Does this one work? Oh, here we go. This one works. All right. Okay, so I'm just adding to my side front. I'm sorry, my center front. Okay, and again, it's really important to, I'm going to pretend my seam allowance is all the way around the rest of it here. I'm just going to cut this off here. Oops. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have these notches right on the edge, because that's where you're going to fit in this into that. So actually, if I cut off this extra, oh, I need a little piece down here. Okay. All right, let me just cut this off here. All right, so now we've got our center front here, and we've got our side front here. And that's what a princess seam style line looks like. Hello. We have a newcomer. I cannot pronounce your name. I am so sorry. But welcome. We're working on finishing up a princess seam from a waist dart and a bust dart. So that would be how you could create the princess seam. So here is what I'm going to do. I am going to cut out a new bodice so you can compare. So let me just switch my view back to this. All right, so I'm just going to tip my camera slightly. Okay, so you can see here there's a little bit of extra here and different things going on. I want to see and compare the shape of this with a shoulder dart attached to a waist dart with all of the ease is right in here, because remember, I didn't distribute it anywhere. I just left it right there. So it's going to be very interesting to share how this fits differently, or if it looks any, smoother with the ease distributed. So just to remind you what I'm talking about here, I'm going to gather up this edge to fit this, and I'm going to sew it together. So I'm going to make another version of this muslin. And just to remind everybody, right here, I'm going to zoom in so you can see. You can see here, I did not, all of this is the ease created by rotating the dart to the shoulder. So closing the bust dart created this ease. It's sitting right here. I didn't distribute it anywhere. So basically, I want to see if I get a smoother shape through this area by easing it in. So that's what I'm going to do next week. So let's just review here. So at this point, you should have a muslin that's fitting pretty nicely. If you haven't had a chance to go over and check my community tab, please do so, because one of my subscribers, Lucia, sent me a photo of a blouse that she made from her basic bodice draft. So if you guys want to share your makes with me, I will put them on the community tab, and then you can share what you're making. But the important thing is you want to have a fitted bodice. You want to make sure your bust darts, are in the right spot. You want them slightly to the side of your apex. So your waist dart should not be directly below your apex, because if it is, your princess seam is going to go right over the top of your apex. You want it slightly to the side. All right, so that's the first thing. Make sure you have a nice fitting sleeve. Make sure you've got enough ease in your non-stretch bodice. Then you're going to create a princess seam. And if you want to share any of that with me, please let me know. If you have any questions, please post those and I will help you. Next week, I'm going to show you how to do a skirt draft, and I will actually be attaching my skirt draft to my princess seam bodice that I'm going to sew up. So I will actually have a torso bodice on next week to show you how that's going to work, and then we're going to draft a skirt draft. And we'll be able to draft the front and back all in one Friday because a skirt draft is really easy to do. So that's what we're going to do next week. I just want to say hi to Diane Bacon. She's very late. That is okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And also, I just want to thank anyone who was in my pattern drafting class that I taught for pattern review yesterday. I think I had like 80 people in class. It was such a fun time, and I just really appreciate each and every one of you for either following me along here or taking classes from me. I really appreciate it. So I did have a lot of fun yesterday in that class, and if you were in that class, please try it and please post your questions in the class message board. The unique thing about taking classes from Pattern Review is that there is a dedicated page set up on her website for students to go in and ask questions, post pictures, and I really look forward to those emails when I get an email from Pattern Review that says, oh, there's a new question in your class. So please feel free, if you were in class and you have questions on pattern greeting, post those in there and I will help you. That was a lot of fun. So I'm just going to look at my calendar here because October is going to get crazy busy for me. So I just want to let you know, next Friday on the 30th, we're doing skirt draft. Then the week after, let me just go over to October here. I actually will be home on the 7th, so I'm not going to have to skip any Fab Fit Fridays because I am going to be leaving on Sunday next weekend. Oh my God, I can't believe it's next weekend already. I'm going to be, oh no, it's not next weekend, the 30th. Oh yeah, no, next Sunday I am leaving for Kentucky. I am volunteering my time to teach at the Master Volunteer Sewing Program at the University of Kentucky because every year they have their their teachers who go out into the community to teach sewing. They have an educational event for them, so I am volunteering my time to go and teach for 3 days at the University of Kentucky to meet the volunteer sewing teachers that go out into the community to teach sewing to the community. So I'm super excited about that. I'm going to be teaching my Great Rub Off, Happy Pants, and like a fitting class where we just talk about all sorts of different fitting things. So that's going to be my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then I'll be home Wednesday night. So I will see you Friday on the, I will see you Friday on the 7th. And then on the 14th, I'm not going to be here. So there'll be 2 Fab Fit Fridays, and then I'll have a week off from Fab Fit Friday because I'm going to Jacksonville to do a 2-day jean fitting workshop. And then also in between there, on the 8th and 9th, I am teaching the top-down, center-out method of pants fitting at Stitches. I'll put a link here, but I will tell you, I think that class is almost full. So if you're interested in learning the top-down, center-out pants fitting method, and you really want some quality time to learn that, it's an 8-hour class. So we're going to take our time and we're going to do all of the steps, and I will guide you through the entire process in 4 2-hour classes on the 8th and 9th of October. So it's from 11 to 1 and then 3 to 5, both Saturday and Sunday on the 8th and 9th. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then, like I said, I'm going to be gone on the 14th and 15th to Jacksonville. And I think I'm also going to be gone on the 21st because I'm teaching in New Jersey at the sewing store Sew Jersey on the 22nd. If anybody lives local to New Jersey, tri-state area, and you want to make yoga pants and a t-shirt all in one day with me, that's going to be a really fun hands-on class at Sew Jersey in New Jersey, in East Hanover, New Jersey, on the 22nd. Then I will be home, and I do have some Zoom things coming, but I am not traveling for the rest of the year, so you won't have to worry about missing any more Fab Fit Fridays after October. So once I get through the first 4 weekends of October, I will be back to my regular schedule, and I'll be able to work on a lot of fun stuff. Super exciting. So that's just my little peek at what's going to be happening in October. It's going to be crazy, but lots of fun. And of course, I'll be keeping you posted on things. I'll post pictures and different things from wherever I am. Anyway, so that is my Fab Fit Friday for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you're enjoying the Basic Bodice Draft. If this is the first, the first episode of Fab Fit Friday that you've watched that is part of the Bodice Draft, if you look in the description below, there are links to the free measurement chart and also the companion, which is the step-by-step instructions on how to draft a basic bodice. You can check those things out. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I'm kind of excited because I'm gonna have some time where I can just spend time sewing and working on some things I actually haven't had time to do lately. So this is gonna be like a fun sewing weekend for me to do some things that I have on my list I haven't had time to get to. So I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend as well. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a lovely rest of your day.